World War II often was called the Good War, mostly because of the sense of unity and patriotism that was caused. Everyone pitched in to help the war effort, from little kids who dug through scrap metal to women who worked in the factories and joined the auxiliary corps. In Wayland, Massachusetts, some women even organized a small local newspaper titled the Cochituate Jeep to send to the locally grown soldiers. This newspaper was 8 to 11 pages long and came out once every 2 weeks. There was a serviceman column which chronicled the activities of the soldiers, a high school column which reported mostly on sports, and a column with the town's news. But what made this newspaper so fantastic is the detail. Being a small town, there were not many exciting events happening. The women of the Jeep therefore decided to report on the little things going on about town. Such occurrences would have been lost forever had these women not chronicled them. For example, we learned Gus Blomgren decided to raise pigs in addition to gardening, and that Bob Doyle broke his collarbone playing baseball. Through these small irregularities in the day-to-day life of Wayland, we are able to accurately pinpoint what wartime life was like. Something interesting that came up again and again was the focus put onto children. One would think that during wartime, especially during such a patriotic war, children would be ignored to emphasize the focus on the war effort. As evidenced by the Jeep, this was not so. Children were encouraged to contribute. They bought war bonds and organized marches. Perhaps the best example of this would be the Memorial Day Parade, described in edition 10 of the Jeep. The Memorial Day Parade occurs to this day. Now it starts at Wayland Middle School and finishes at the South Cemetery. However, during the war, there were 2 parades, each with more fanfare than the 21st century ones. One started at the town building and ended at South Cemetery, while the other started right after and culminated at North Cemetery. The same prayers and speeches were read, such as Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, but it was truly an all-day event. This year was particularly special. Firstly, the Girl Scouts dedicated a new flagpole. It was a slightly 40-foot mast erected for the Park and Playground Commission by the Pigeon Hollow Spar Company, the oldest ship-rigging firm in the state. We also know that after the raising of the pole, the entire group with the audience sang the Star-Spangled Banner and saluted the flag. Finally, the 2 honor rolls bearing the names of the men and women of the town who have entered the country's armed forces were put into place, one in Wayland and one in Cochituate. Finally, we know that the Cochituate roll is beautifully situated on that corner plot, which is so nicely developed and beautified by the Cochituate Garden Club. The whole community was part of this effort, and all across the country, similar communities did the same. There is no denying that the war was influential on the lives of adolescents growing up during World War II. However, we've also come to the conclusion that the war did not drastically affect them. Much like today, adolescents worked hard in school and played sports like football, basketball, and baseball. Unfortunately, the Wayland High School teams were not very good, and we were clobbered by Weston on multiple occasions. The school was rigorous, with the best students inducted into the National Honor Society. The Jeep warned soldiers overseas that if you boys don't think we on the home front have battles to fight, you should tackle some of those senior history assignments. So although the war did play a part in the lives of adolescents at that time, it did not interfere with the usual routine of growing up in Wayland in the 1940s. While students were not greatly affected by the events during this time, women were. During the war years, they dedicated their lives to the effort. Women joined the Auxiliary Military Corps, worked in factories, and grew victory gardens. The Jeep itself is a prime example of the work that women put into helping the troops in Europe. The Jeep required a tremendous effort. Formatting, printing, taking pictures, and editing took lots of time. Writing the news took even more. The women found and wrote down all of the goings-on in Wayland, no matter how small. 20 to 30 pieces of news every 2 weeks could not have been a small feat, especially in a small town like Wayland. But they also had to collect poems, drawings, and photos. One poem that we see asks if the reader has heard of a moron who cut off his fingers so he could write shorthand, who tried to sharpen the shoulder blades, who heard he was going to die, so he went into the living room. This poem takes a page describing the foolish things that this man does. Although some of the jokes would now be considered at best politically incorrect, like the line, "Who thought manual labor was a Mexican?" It's a very funny addition. Images, too, help keep the newspaper fun. One image is a photo of a 2-year-old with a fish he caught that's as long as he is. Another is a sketch found on a South Pacific Navy boat and was sent back to the woman of the Jeep. It depicts a man toweling off after a bath, but the woman comments that the man in the drawing had some rub down. These jokes, some clearly more risque than others, help dispel the air of depression hanging over the Jeep. Being a wartime newspaper, deaths were expected and publicized with respect and honor. When George Fullock, Gurney Nickel, and Robert Tilson died all around the same time, the Jeep devoted a column for each on the front page, detailing their biography, with each man's picture at the top. The editors also added a note announcing that this town was grieved to learn of these deaths, and it is certain that their folks have the utmost sympathy of every individual in the town. The Jeep regrets to announce this sad news. Through this strange combination of sadness and humor, the Jeep managed to save the spirit of Wayland in everyday life, while still respecting the fallen soldiers all over the globe. Perhaps because of this balance, the Jeep always received an enthusiastic response. When he received his first edition, Lieutenant Robert Robinson reported that the newspaper was, without a doubt, the best of its kind that had come from any man's hometown. I had no idea that there was so much news in the little old town. Others wrote that it was the best little paper there is, and one man asked the editors to send me a Jeep wherever I go. Many servicemen explained that their friends read the Jeep too. Much like a reality TV show, these friends became enamored with Wayland and its citizens, even though they had never visited or met anyone. The woman of the Jeep went above and beyond to give the men fighting in Europe a taste of home, and by all accounts, they succeeded. Overall, through the Jeep, the woman who ran it and the townspeople submitting stories contributed just as much of their life to the war as the men who were doing the actual fighting. Although children were still a part of this effort, the war did not take precedent over adolescents in the shaping of their lives.